Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, this is Red Berry Leo here, and welcome back to another Civil Air Patrol video. In today's video, I am talking about the senior member side of the staff duty analysis assignments that are required for cadet officers to complete to promote. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience, about some of the things that I recommend implementing when you are doing staff duty analysis grading and working with the cadets, in addition to just talking about some of the materials that are associated with it. SDAs are written and oral assignments that cadets are required to complete between Phase 3 and Phase 4, where it's all achievements except for the milestone achievements, so that excludes the Earhart, Acre, and Spots. But from Cadet Second Lieutenant to Cadet Major, they're required to do SDAs. And they get to select which one they do, but they are also required to do like the writing side of it, the oral side of it, a feedback session, in addition to serving in a cadet staff position. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the cadet staff position. So one of my recommendations for when a cadet is serving in a staff position is that they're actually doing something in that position and that their actions have some sort of positive impact on the unit. There have been some instances where I've seen cadets be slotted officially and approved by the unit commander to say, like, yeah, they're serving as the public affairs officer, or they're serving as the logistics officer, aerospace education, whatever. They don't always do something in that position. And they don't receive feedback from the senior member who's in that support role, like the aerospace education officer. They don't communicate with actively, or they don't work with the public affairs officer to put together articles and increase awareness in the community about what Civil Air Patrol is doing. And that is not only a loss for the cadet, but it's also a loss for the unit, because this is an opportunity for them to learn more about that role. And if they're not getting that all-encompassing experience, if it says in the record that they served in that position, then they should be able to say what they did and how it impacted the unit. Or at least that's how I feel. Some units feel like, yeah, just check the box off, but if you don't get something out of being assigned to something, to me that's frustrating, because it's like there's a loss of opportunity there, that someone else who is motivated and excited to be in that role may have lost that opportunity if that other cadet was in that position. So I highly recommend, if you can, actively ensure that cadets who are in cadet staff roles have to set goals for their team, are actively putting together briefings, and are actively working with the unit in that role, and not just sitting in the role without doing stuff. In terms of the written assignment is to be done before the oral assignment. And sometimes cadets are like, oh, I don't know, I'm supposed to do an SDA, I don't know what the requirements are. There is a whole page on the Civil Air Patrol website, which I've included a link down in the description, and it has the pamphlet, it has CAPP pamphlet 60-32, which is the SDA guide, and it has examples of the different SDAs, it has the rubrics on that website, so please check it out. It's a great resource in order to understand what the expectations are for cadets. Some problems that I see with SDAs when I'm grading them is that they are not meeting the required word count and page count. They may not have included important information that is required for that document. So if someone's writing to address the persuasive paper, it's called the advocacy paper on the guide and on the website and everything. Let's say someone's writing an advocacy paper and they don't address counterpoints ever, and they just say, this is the best thing ever. They don't provide any sources to me, it's not persuasive, and they don't have those counter arguments. Like, they didn't look at the rubric before writing it. So for me, I may not necessarily pass them on it, but I would do a conference call to remediate some of those requirements. And I would first ask, did you look at the rubric? What are your thoughts on the rubric? Does your paper meet the requirements on the rubric? Before I tell the person that they're going to have to do edits and that I'm not going to pass them on that first round, I would want to make sure that they understand and that they think yes, there are areas for improvement, and here are the steps that I can take to improve my paper. Because, like, when you're giving feedback, you can't just say, oh, I'm not going to pass you on it. That doesn't benefit them in any way. And they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to improve my paper and finally pass this SDA. Some cadets feel that SDAs are a waste of time, that they're not really getting anything out of. And part of the reason why SDAs exist is to improve the quality of writing within the cadets that are participating in the program, and that they receive feedback on their writing. Because sometimes in school, they don't necessarily have to write that frequently. I know I wrote a lot in high school because I took AP English classes, but some cadets don't necessarily have the opportunity to do that. And so by having SDAs, they are challenged in their writing. There are requirements that they're supposed to meet, and senior members can provide feedback and look at how that cadet is performing, in addition to providing them guidance to improve it, because they have familiarity potentially with like professional writing, or even like with master's or PhD writing things. So senior members are a very, very valuable asset when it comes to mentoring cadets. And so SDAs are a great opportunity for senior members to do that. So one thing that I have seen in some units is that the CDC is the only person who is grading SDAs. That doesn't necessarily need to be the case. Yes, the CDC should be included on all communications, but it could be a different senior member who is a testing officer who is grading everything. And this allows for other senior members other than the CDC to be involved with the cadet program, provide feedback, provide insight, and provide an alternative perspective. Like, one of the most beneficial situations might be if you have 5 different senior members and each one is grading SDAs, and they have about the same understanding of what the rubric says and what the minimum requirements are, but then when they're giving feedback, they can tailor it to what their experience is and provide the cadet with alternative perspectives on each essay. Of course, there's also the argument where the senior member can't watch the improvement of the writing from each stage, but technically the CDC should, if they're included on every communication and they're just like briefly reading through the essay. I've had the experience to at least see like a cadet second lieutenant going up into like a cadet captain and read how they have improved over time, and it's really awesome to be able to see that improvement. It not only because of their school education, but also because of their Civil Air Patrol experience. So it's very cool and rewarding. So it's up to you on how you want to handle who is grading it, but it should be someone who is willing to provide feedback, like in the feedback sandwich method, hopefully over like a voice call or in person, just so that the cadet gets verbal feedback. It can be written feedback as well. There's not a problem with doing written feedback, though it's harder to misinterpret verbal and like visual communication versus just an email or like comments on a Word document. You know, it's a little bit different. And then when it comes to the oral section, it's after the written section has been approved and like that's been completed, and some of them are a little bit tricky. For example, there is one where you have to do an oral presentation on your resume. With the resume one, some cadets are unsure on how to structure their speech. They just kind of go over each of the things that are listed off in their resume. It's almost as though they have to prepare 2 different things that are addressing their experience, right? Because on the resume, they're like listing off their Civil Air Patrol experience, they're listing their school experience, they're listing work experience if they have any, and they might even mention GPA, clubs, anything like that. But then when it comes to the oral portion, what do you think? Should they be reading it off line by line? Is that something that you would find engaging and interesting? I personally think that for like, especially the resume, instead of formatting it like as though they were just going through their resume line by line, talking about key experiences for them that make them the best potential candidate for whatever position that they're applying for, or just saying that they are qualified in general. So, like, they could talk about their experience as a flight commander, their experience being the secretary at a high school club, or being a captain on their sports team. They could talk about those experiences and how diverse they are in their background. And then at the end, like in the conclusion, talk about their diverse background and how they are ready to engage with the local community at any level. That would be a little bit more engaging to me than just reading off their resume. So I think part of it is just like saying the significance of the experience and not just saying that they have experience. Because then it's not just saying like, I did this. It's like, I did this and here's the impact and here's what I took away from that experience. Just broadening out a little bit more from just that very spotlight focus on, I did this. That's just my thought. And then when it comes to the feedback forums, it's the CAPP F60-90 series for like the end of achievement feedback. And those are good to do like over webcam if you can, or over voice. They should not be done just over email. It's something that it is very difficult to convey feedback over just writing, and being able to do questions of the person of like, how do you feel things have been going? Have you been accomplishing your goals? Is there anything you're proud of? Is there anything you would like to improve on in the future? Stuff like that, and being able to have a record of it is very important, because you can watch that cadet progress over their cadet career and see what goals they have and if they actually met those goals. Some cadets, when they are in phase 3 or phase 4, don't have as many goals. They feel like they've kind of gotten everything out of the program that they need, which some of them have a ton of experience by the end of phase 4 and they're like, yeah, I'm kind of ready to check out. But it's always good to remind them of what impact they have on the unit as well, and what they have done, and the importance of their actions as they continue to volunteer with the organization and be involved with Civil Air Patrol. Last suggestion that I do have is, please do not feel like you're required to pass cadets on the first try for the writing assignments. And that could even go for the oral portion, but specifically for the writing segments, it's good for the cadet to receive some sort of feedback at least once, make revisions, and then submit it again. They may not have had someone review it before. Like, I personally would have other people read it before I submitted it, at least most of the time when I did SDAs. And that was under the old SDA system, but with the new SDA system, it's good to have another set of eyes on the cadet side before it's submitted for grading. But if they don't get that feedback from someone else before it's graded, then that grader, giving that cadet the opportunity to make revisions, can further improve their writing. So, like, I think some people have the philosophy of not passing, just don't pass people on their first try, ever. And I think it should not be a generalization, never. But if the writing is really, really strong, still provide feedback and say, yes, this passed, and please make these revisions before you do the oral presentation. But for now, you can proceed with the oral. Something like that. And that, I think, would be a good system to be able to just say, I'm always going to give feedback, or the graders are always going to give feedback on the written portion, and always give feedback on the verbal, oral portion as well. So if you have any questions for me, whether you are a senior member who is currently trying to grade SDAs or a cadet who is currently working on them, please feel free to leave a comment down below. If you're not either of those, that's cool too. But thank you guys so much for watching, and that is all, folks. Until next time, toodles.